Hi, this is Gwendolyn Go, your desperate housewife who crafts. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made this card by painting directly on Distress Oxide inks using my new Derwent Graphik line painters. Now these markers come with fluid opaque paints in them and have a fine tip of 0.5 millimeters. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how they compare with other pigment-based markers that I have against a dark watercolored background. Now, when I first made this video, I only had the 4 colors you see here, but they come in 20 colors, and I just received them today. Yay! I'm so happy. So I can't wait to color with them and share them with you on YouTube very soon. So what I did was I've used a dark Distress Oxide ink pad that I had and just put some color on a 300-gram watercolor paper. Now you want to use watercolor paper if you're going to be painting with these markers because, well, you're going to be watercoloring with them if you use my method. So it's good to use watercolor paper if you don't want your paper to warp. So here you can see I'm putting down a nice thick layer of this Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink because I just wanted to show you how they will come up on a dark surface. So I have here a Tombow dual marker. I will paint directly on the Distress Oxide and then paint beside so that you can see the original color. Here I'm painting with my Zig Clean Color Real brushes. As you can see, the real color is much brighter than that on the Distress Oxide. And now I'm using my Derwent Graphik line painters. Now to use these pens, you actually have to pump them. So this is probably about the second day I'm using them. So I haven't quite gotten the hang of it, but you have to pump them so that the ink flows down. So here you can see the comparison of the 3 different pens that I've used. I didn't bring out Copics because, for one, I don't have them, and second, I find that quite expensive and you can't blend them with water. You have to blend them with other markers or a transparent Copic marker. So I haven't got any Copics for that reason. So you can also use water with these markers, and this is what I'm doing here. I'm putting down some water onto the Distress Oxide ink, and then I went over it with water to show you how the color looks like. It does pick up a little bit of the Distress Oxide ink, and it reacts like watercolor when you put in a blob of ink into a puddle of water. It just spreads out. So that gives some interesting possibilities also. Today I'm using Altenew's Tulip stamp set to show you how I watercolored it on the Distress Oxide ink. As you can see, I pumped out a little bit of ink onto an acrylic block and I picked it up with my paintbrush and just colored each petal with it. See how opaque the inks are? The purple underneath hardly shows through. Now I would recommend that you leave a little border between each petal because the paints are so opaque that they just cover completely the stamp lines. So now to create some shading, I just pumped out a little bit of white ink from the pen and just went over the petal while it was still wet. So this enables you to do some shading and give some perspective on your flower. I'm still getting used to these markers as I just got them a few days ago. So I'm experimenting with the thickness of the paints and how much water I need to use to give my petal and my flowers the right shading that I want. On top of that, I'm not a very good watercolorist either, as I just started learning how to watercolor only a few months ago. So if you're a beginner like me, I hope you'll try this method and let me know when you do. Now, you can tell that I'm dabbing my water pen very frequently on the tissue that I have on the right side of the image. Now this is because the paints are very opaque. So if you don't want the color that you used before onto your flower or your image, then you really have to give a light dab onto the tissue to get that color off. So here I am trying to put on some white shading onto my tulip. And as the paint, the blue paint at the bottom is still wet, when I go in with my white paint, it does pick up a little bit of the blue paint, which is why I was dabbing it on the tissue paper quite often to get rid of the blue paint. Now when these paints are wet, you can work with them like normal watercolor, but once they dry, they don't move an inch. So even if you put water over it, you're not going to get out any of the color, which you will see at the end of my video when I spritz my card with water. This means that you can use the pens and go over your previously painted image and add some fine detail with it, or if you don't like the color, just go over it with another color. And I can tell you I've been doing that quite a lot when I've been playing around with these pens, and they work really well. Since the new color you're putting on doesn't blend with the color underneath, it just puts on the new color, and you can cover the color you previously painted before. I hope you know what I mean, but I'll be making more videos using these markers because I just love playing with them. So in the next video, I'll show you what I mean. Now another tip, since these colors are permanent when they dry, you have to be careful when you get them on your hands to wash them off as soon as possible. And if they fall onto your clothes, wet them very quickly and try and get the ink off. Also, since I'm putting the inks on my acrylic blocks, I wipe them off with a wet wipe as soon as possible so that it makes it easier to clean them and not have to scrub them later when they get dry. Now you can see that the ink that I just put on to the Distress Oxide background reacted a bit with the purple background, so it gave me a sort of like reddish copper color, which I love, so I left it. But if you don't like it, you just wait until it dries and then you go over with the same marker again, and it'll just completely cover that area and give you the nice green that you were looking for. Another option is to first paint with the white marker as watercolor, meaning putting down the white paint onto the acrylic block and then painting it with the white paint. And then once it's dry, you go in with the original color that you wanted. This will also help with your shading if that's what you wanted to do. And now I'm going to put on a little bit of music while you enjoy the rest of the video of me trying to figure out how to shade my tulips. But I'll come back right at the end to talk about a little bit more about what these markers can do. Now I've finished the flower, I'm going to go back in, since the first tulip is completely dry, with my marker and just put in undiluted ink to add some depth. And then I'm going to spritz water on the whole panel once my watercolored flowers are dry. Now you will see that the water that I spritz in reacted with the Distress Oxide inks, but did not react with my watercolored tulips at all. To finish, I just cut my watercolored panel with an oval die cut and stuck it onto a card that I had previously splattered with the same markers. Yes, you can create paint splatters with these markers also. You just have to flood the nib by pumping on it and then tapping it against another pen and create splatters onto the card. So I hope you enjoyed this second video on the use of the Derwent Graphik line painters. And if you did like it, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. That would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for watching and come back soon. Bye!